While the fallout surrounding the Sergeant Bo Bergdahl trade intensifies, President Obama is standing firmly behind his decision to release those 5 Taliban detainees. They are now in the Gulf state of Qatar, where they will spend the next year under a travel ban. So where exactly are they being held, and who's responsible for them? NBC's Ayman Mohadeen is joining me now on the phone from Qatar with more details. Ayman, both of those questions, what do you know on both fronts?
Well, we know that the Qatari government, which broke the deal between the U.S. and the Taliban, has effectively given the United States government assurances that these 5 individuals would not violate the terms of the agreement, would not be involved in any type of military incitement, nor give media interviews, and more importantly, that there would be a ban imposed on their travel outside of Qatar, prohibiting them from returning perhaps to Afghanistan or anywhere else where they could pose a threat to U.S. national security. But at the same time, the Qatari government is insisting that these individuals are free to move about within the country as they wish. They are also making available the family members of some of these individuals. They're giving them the ability to reunite here in Doha. So on one hand, the Qatari government is certainly playing an important role in guaranteeing the success of this broker deal, but at the same time, they are also saying that these individuals are free individuals to roam about the country freely as they wish.
Ayman, do you get a sense of how the Qatari people feel about having these 5 members of the Taliban held in their country?
Well, this is part of a larger political policy, if you will, of the Qatari government, and that is certainly something that a lot of the local Qatari residents here and nationals feel very confident in. Their government has, over the course of the last several years, kept open communications with some of the United States government's, if you will, adversaries in the region, including Iran, Hamas, and now the Taliban. It is a policy that the government here has adopted for some time, and certainly Qatari citizens have been and have expressed support for the government's approach, that they do not, or at least are not perceived to being in one camp or the other. So for the time being, it seems that the country here certainly has no problem with the presence of these 5 individuals. After all, they did allow the Taliban to open a political office here. And so long as any of these individuals try not to destabilize the country or participate in any kind of violence or acts, I think you can safely say that the Qatari people would welcome this policy, because the way it is being perceived in the region is that this is if you will, a breakthrough in negotiations, perhaps a chance at reconciliation talks within Afghanistan, and a lot of that is being attributed to Qatar for playing that role.
Okay, NBC's Ayman Mohadeen there. Thank you so much from Qatar. Well, joining me now is the Daily Beast's Kimberly Dozier. Kimberly spent 4 years in intelligence covering the Afghanistan and Pakistan conflicts for the Associated Press, and we welcome you back to the program. Good to see you.
Good to be here.
So let's talk. A few Westerners know Afghanistan and this war as well as you do. Did it surprise you that Sergeant Bergdahl's release came now? Talk about the timing.
Not so much of a surprise because of what's going on in Afghanistan right now with U.S. troops shrinking their presence. I was just in Afghanistan about a month ago and went out to the east, where what U.S. troops are doing is pulling away from the border. Every time they shut down a base, they essentially lose some visibility into Pakistan. And that was the way they were keeping track, at least loosely, of where Bergdahl was being held. With every passing month, they had less of a chance of tracking him down and rescuing him, which made negotiations a far more attractive option.
Yeah. What can you tell us about these Taliban members who were released? Are they considered high risk still? Is there legitimate fear they could return to their positions in the battlefield? And we have to keep in mind, these guys have been behind bars for 12 years. Is there any evidence of, Western indoctrination at all? Would they even be taken back by the Taliban?
Well, the senior officials I've spoken to, both current and former, say that they don't think they'll be so valuable in terms of their role on the battlefield. They've been out of the action since 2002, but it's the prestige value that some of the detractors of this deal are complaining about. The propaganda reward that the Taliban got just by getting 5 of their senior people released. Will they return to the fight? Possibly. Some special operations officials and intelligence officials I've spoken to have said, fine, let them return to the field of battle and commit acts of violence, then we'll help our Afghan partners take them out. So the problem is, once you melt into the wilds of Afghanistan, that promise could be hard to follow through on.
Yeah, absolutely. There is an article in the New York Times in which it is written that this trade deal has offered insight into the Taliban's inner workings. What does the success of the negotiations tell you, Kimberly, about the state of the Taliban and its chain of command?
Well, there had been some real rancor between the military and the political side of the Taliban over whether to proceed with negotiations with the Afghan government. Now this has in some ways strengthened the hand of those who have negotiated this deal. They've said, you know, we have stuck with the fight. We've gotten our guys back. So now is not the time to move forward with talks. They're holding fire. Of course, you talk to administration officials, and they're hoping that this will presage warmer relations between the Afghan government and the Taliban. The Afghan government wasn't so happy with this deal, especially the fact that they were cut out of it.
I was going to say, I mean, is there a tangible trail or tangible evidence that this might help broker a peace deal between the two? I mean, it's certainly just speculation at this point.
You know, at this point, the Taliban is reveling in what is for them a PR victory. Will they feel empowered by this to turn to the political side of power versus continuing the fight on the battlefield? A lot of the folks I talk to in the intelligence world think they're going to take this as a sign that they should just keep up the fight, that they will hold fire until U.S. troops draw down to the point that they're not much of an opposition force, and do just like they've done several times before. First take the countryside, then take the smaller urban areas, and eventually threaten government. It's going to be years before we know which way it goes.
So we have, if I'm not mistaken, 9,800 personnel scheduled to be in that country by the end of the year. Cut that number by half by the end of 2015. Leave just a smattering of those to protect U.S. interests, buildings, you know, embassy, consulates, that kind of thing in 2016. Once the United States is gone, does that open the door for terrorism to be back on the rise, for insurgents to increase, and for Western targets to be once again front and center?
Now, al-Qaeda is definitely planning towards that time. They have a small presence in the Kunar and Nuristan region of eastern Afghanistan. They are laying the groundwork for eventually having training camps and things like that. Will there be enough Afghan capability to keep that from threatening the United States? Some U.S. officials I speak to say, hey, that's what the Predator plan is for. We will be able to keep those camps small enough that they're too busy engaged with just surviving like they are now to threaten the United States. Again, this is something we're going to have to see towards the end of this year and towards the end of next year. That's also something the administration's going to have to factor in when they think how many people to leave there in the end. Do they go down to a small 100-person military cooperation office within the embassy, or do they leave 2,000 to 3,000 troops to continue to work with the Afghans and essentially stiffen their counterterrorism program to hunt these potential terrorists?
We will see. With your help, the Daily Beast's Kimberly Dozier. Thank you so much. Good to see you.
Thank you.